Hey everybody, we are now live. We can hear you loud and clear, Christian, so let's dive in. My name's Andrew Copeland, and everybody welcome today to a conversation about insurance. And literally about an hour ago, I lost power at my house while I was in the middle of my workday. And for me at home, it was a pretty big inconvenience. Honestly, it's probably more of an inconvenience for my 6-year-old who lost power to his tablet. But for all of you with breweries, what happens when you lose power? I didn't expect to have this tie in for today, but today we're going to talk about how these unforeseen events can lead to critical lessons. And we'll discuss the evolving nature of risk, the importance of proactive mitigation, and the power of robust insurance in fostering resilience. But first, let's meet today's guest. And Chris, you're to the right of me. You get to go first, my friend.
Excellent. Chris Dial. I'm with Brewery Agents. I also own a brewery, so Wanderlinger Brewing Company down in Chattanooga, Tennessee is where I got my feet wet, understanding what happens in the brewery world for the good, bad, the ugly, blood, sweat, and tears. I stepped into an insurance role about a year and a half, decided what do I know best? I know breweries, so I decided I'd step in and be here to take care of my fellow brewery owners and do the best I can to answer questions and help people out.
I can only imagine how busy your days are.
Some days are busier than others.
Well, thanks for being here. KP, you're up.
Yes, sir. So I am KP. Government name is Kanal Patel. One of the owners down at Mill Creek Brewery in Nolensville, Tennessee. I got into the brewery business about 5 years ago. We bought an existing brewery that was going to be closing. We came in to kind of bring it back to life, and we're on this new journey to make good quality beer and get to know all our other brewery owners in town. And Chris has actually helped us out quite a few times with a few things.
And you mentioned it prior to the call, but you also wear another hat. What other responsibilities and roles in life do you have?
So my father and I do commercial real estate. We've got some fast food restaurants as well. My mother's a doctor. My sister just moved to Nashville. She's a doctor, so helping manage their clinics. And then just day-to-day life. There's always something going on, and social life kind of dwindles the more time goes on.
We'd be bored if we weren't busy.
Absolutely.
Now, Josh, welcome to the party.
All right, guys. Hey, so Josh Buckley. I lead the nation's brewing company here down in Nashville, Tennessee. We're building a family of brands, so we include Fat Bottom Brewing, Music City Beer Company, Bravazzi. Partner with Chris on the Wanderlinger side. For me, it's like at the end of the day, I guess I'm sort of the one steering the ship, but it's really a team effort every step of the way. It's a fun time, and each brand has its own story, audience. We work hard to really keep them all unique for our customers while sharing the resources behind the scenes. For me, I pretty much stay involved in everything from building culture, tap room strategies, to making sure the beer actually gets into people's hands. So yeah, really excited to be here and swap ideas with these guys. Get to see each other probably not as much as we want to, but it's fun. It's always fun to share stuff with the industry we love and with the people you like. So,
with all the things you're doing, the brands that you help oversee, I imagine insurance probably isn't something you talk about most times.
It's I think that's where the challenges are of insurance is it's understandably everybody can get so focused on making great beer, doing the breweries, all the things you have to do that you can sometimes forget about it. But it is certainly it's one of those you hope you never have to use it, but when you do, it is an important thing to get right and have a great advisor working with you on it. So
excited to learn more about that today and your experiences. Now, Christian, you're up.
Hey guys, can you hear me okay, by the way? Yeah, Josh, I was just crushing on some Bravazzi at the airport. It took me a minute to realize there was alcohol in that thing. So after my third one, that's when I realized it. Nice job on that. Yeah, my name is Christian Spears. I'm the founder and president of Tennessee Brewworks. We're in Nashville, Tennessee. We've got a spot also in the airport. And we're actually building a third spot right now in East Tennessee in a town called Lenore City. The brewery itself has been around since 2013. We brewed our first beer in August of 2013. Probably like you guys worked on it a hell of a lot longer than that. But yeah, we're August 18th, I think, was that our 13th year. So yeah, we've been around a second. sold about 150,000 cases. Sorry, 125,000 cases of beer last year. We're only in Tennessee. We're mostly only in Middle and East Tennessee, although you can find our beer a little bit out west. Some. Yeah, we I think our origin story is more around. We used to go to the farmers market and find stuff to brew with. I had kind of moved abroad a little bit, lived up in New York and London after college. When I came back down south, I couldn't find anything that I liked. We were drinking all these really cool Belgians and English ales, and coming back down to the south, there were just so many limitations on what we could do. So we used to go to the farmers market, buy really cool adjuncts, make beer indigenous where we're from, and got the crazy idea, like the rest of you guys, of opening a brewery. And the rest is history. So, here we are today. Thanks for having us to the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. So we'll start with you on this one, Christian, and everybody else. We'll kind of do rapid fire round. You all have been doing this quite some time. Christian, 13 years. If you had to pick one thing that you're most proud of, some sort of accomplishment, what would that be? Something you've done in your 13 years of beer?
A couple things. I mean, we dove in with this idea of trying to work with the local farmers here, and I know there's different ways to do that, but we have a 10 to 20 year mission, I guess, to really utilize the agriculture system of Tennessee and work it into not just the beer brewing, but the distillery side of things. Agriculture is the biggest industry in the state, and spirits are the number one export in the state, and breweries, at least for some time, are one of the fastest growing industries. And we're somehow trying to link us all together and use our land in our product, and which, believe it or not, is not the case. We were able to brew the first production commercial all Tennessee grain beer back in 2018. And we springboard that a little bit too with another partnership that I'm really proud of, is we brew the official beer for the Tennessee State Parks, with a portion of proceeds going back to them. So we've given them, it's getting close to about $70K in donations on the back of that beer, which is a big deal for a business our size. So I'm pretty proud of that. Yeah.
That is amazing, and congrats. So who wants to jump in next?
I'll take the next one. Being on the younger side of the brewing world, for us, the biggest accomplishment so far is just kind of bringing our little small town of Nolensville together. We kind of call ourselves the living room of Nolensville. Basically just doing community events, giving back to our local park system. Christian, I really commend you on that donation. That's kind of where that inspiration kind of really comes from, is giving back to our local community and making sure that absolutely just giving back and making sure that we're not just doing beer, we're also making the world around us a better place and leaving it cleaner, better for the younger generation as they grow up and having the opportunity to enjoy it.
Love it. Josh, how about you? Accomplishment from your career you're pretty proud of?
Yeah, so Fat Bottom, we've been around we're celebrating our 13th anniversary this in a couple weeks here. So one of the older original guys is kind of like Christian for here in the craft beer scene in Nashville. And I think these guys both hit it, so I won't dwell on it. But craft beer is clearly about community and supporting the community and being a part of it. And we've been lucky enough to be affiliated with a couple super cool charities in town. For us, that we've done a lot of work with Nashville Sexual Assault Center over the years and supporting them, and we brewed a specific beer for them over the past couple of years that helps raise awareness and money for them, and the mission that they're doing. And then the other kind of cool charity we also in our portfolio with Fat Bottom, we also have a beer that supports military. And so been fortunate enough over the past couple of years now to grow close with these guys at a group called Aerial Recovery, which is this cool organization. In the past year or so, they've grown a lot in terms of notoriety, but they're here in town, and they kind of support either one of their missions is Healing the Heroes, which involves, helping guys transition out of military life into civilian life and some of the struggles that they do. And then on the other side, they do a lot of disaster relief. For instance, they were just in Houston, helping out in Texas with all that. And we're out helping in the Carolinas when all that horrible, terrible flooding happened. And given their unique set of skills, they kind of do, they go in and help rescue the folks that normal law enforcement and things are going to struggle to rescue. So that's been a super cool piece to be involved with and go back and forth with those guys. But honestly, I also think some of the coolest parts and proudest moments are Even just the small ones, when you walk into your tap room, and I'm sure KP Chris probably feel the same way, right? It's like when you walk into that tap room, and it's packed, or a team member, you get that team member. I'm a big person. Part of what I do is I just love doing the team stuff and helping build organizations. And so, when you get someone that starts off, the guy who runs our brewery started off 13 years ago in the tap room as a server, and now he's in an operational role making a lot of great beers. So I think those are cool, and nothing I know feels better than when somebody says, man, this is my favorite beer, this is my favorite place to be. So those are also really super cool, kind of smaller proud moments for sure.
It's the human aspects of our industry that's just so special. Yeah. Building those connections. Yeah, we're there for the beer. When someone tells you that your spot, Josh or Christian or KP, is literally their favorite place to come, that's what it is all about.
Yeah, totally.
I love it.
And Chris, because it's open, the new spot. You're the new hot spot, Chris.
Yeah, tell us about your new spot, Chris. And is that your biggest accomplishment, getting into the choo-choo?
Yeah, I mean, choo-choo was a great relocation aspect. I mean, sometimes you find yourself in a bad position. I know there's plenty of breweries out there that they say location is everything. And it seems like something's great when you first start and you get in and you figure out it's not working. And we were in that spot, and we had to pivot and change, and we got involved with the nations from a production perspective and a brand perspective, because we were in one of those spots that we needed to do something different. And
are you able to give a little backstory in the transition you just made?
Yeah. So let's see, go back to October of 23, I think it was, Josh, that we signed on with the nations to fall under their umbrella. And from a production side, we were struggling. We were a small brewery that thought we could do it big, and financially the book said otherwise, and we were in a tough spot. And Andy and Ben and Josh over there at the nations, we were able to partner with them and fall under their fold and be able to take production out of where we were, which gave us flexibility to do something different with our space. And so as we looked at what that was going to be, I played a game with my landlord that I lost, and we ended up having to move 6 weeks later, and I wasn't ready. And so we ended up being closed for 9 months while we were trying to figure out where are we going to go, how quick can we make it happen. 9 months later, we opened inside the historic Chattanooga Choo Choo. I believe when you say location is everything, this is going to be it for us. This is the location we needed, and it just kind of happened. And sometimes, whether it's the man above or whatever the situation might be, things work out, and this worked out well for us. So we opened 6 weeks ago after being closed for 9 months. So, if you think your bank account looks rough, try doing that and funding a startup. So yeah, we're back open and things are good. And my brother's trying to get the pilot system back up and running, hopefully by next week, so that Josh and his team over there will have one of my brother's biggest traits or accomplishments, I believe. 22, we won the bronze medal for oatmeal stout with World Beer Cup. So our brother can make fantastic beers, and we want to have more of those out there in the market. Well, when you're closed, that doesn't really help. So he's back up, going to be brewing soon, kicking beers over to Josh's team, see if we can kind of ramp some of those up and get them back out into the market.
You took a bad situation and turned it into a positive there. I mean, it's not tough to do that. So I really commend you for going through that probably really challenging 9 months.
It has been, for sure. And the 3 months before that, because you knew you were leaving and you're trying to close things down and convince people, like, we're not closing, we will be back, I promise. Don't stop posting on Facebook that we're closed and we went bankrupt, because that's not what happened.
So not to continue down that less than ideal rabbit hole, but that's where we're going to go next, everybody. So I'd love to hear if anyone at the table today, if you've had any situations that led to insurance claims. I know this is one that not everybody's always jumping to speak about, but does anybody have anything they'd like to share, as generally as you like, of a situation you may have encountered over time?
Nothing major. I mean, how small you want to go here? I mean,
give us what you got, Christian.
I went to we had a private event here, and after the event, we had a group out on the sidewalk in front of the facility, and and it was a 5-year-old girl sitting out there. They're not even on our property. And the father goes to get the car, and the mother wanders down, at least 30, 40 feet away from the kid, nowhere near the kid. And if you've been to our place, we have a Tennessee Brewix, these kind of like steel cutouts from our place. And the kid had kind of hoisted herself up and started pulling the tee down. And she got it bent over, and it hit her on the head, and she falls down the sidewalk, and then looks like a nice little bee sting on her forehead. The father then comes in and calls me. This all happened. They all left, and he calls me and informs me that it's my unlucky day. He's a lawyer, and this is the kind of claims he does for a living, and proceeded to sue us.
Oh,
So insurance stepped in and settled for them, because in the words of my agent, a 5-year-old with a mark on her forehead is not something you ever want a judge to look at. And so that was that. That could have been a lot worse, I guess, if we had gone full course and the insurance helped. But how's that one for getting everyone's blood boiling a little bit?
where do I knock on something?
Yeah, kids in breweries are always a fun topic, and I guess your unfortunate situation hopefully can be a warning to others that this could happen to you. So have that agent who's got your back.
Yeah, other than that, I think we've avoided it. We should have Smith and Lentz on here.
Who's that?
With the Smith and Lentz. They had the hurricane. The tornado.
Yeah.
They turned that into a very positive for themselves. But
Crazy Gnome, he had that here in Nashville.
Crazy Gnome.
Yeah. That too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
on my side, I tend to hear more. I haven't had personal claims yet. We've had a couple that, looking back on things, we actually had coverage, and this is now that I sit in a different seat and see things from a different view, we had claims that I could have filed that I didn't even know I could, because my agent at the time didn't educate me on what I actually had coverage for.
That's actually a really interesting statement there. Like, can you kind of elaborate more on some of the things that could have been potential claims?
Yeah. So one, we early on, we had a situation where a keg got dropped on somebody's foot in one of our delivery guys, and we knew we had work comp, but as he was injured and he had a big black toe and you knew his foot was broke, my side being a small business guy, and it's like, do I want to file a claim? Do I not want to file a claim? Like, I'm not even going to ask, because if I ask, then I'm going to find out, oh, I have to pay a deductible, and my rates are going to go up. So I just kept my mouth shut, and we kind of let the guy ride it out. And that wasn't the right situation for him. But being in my shoes, I was like so hesitant. I was like, man, I don't want to try to file a claim, or I don't want to find out that my rates are going to triple or they're going to drop me, because we haven't been open very long. So, having somebody that can answer the phone and walk you through that, and not have that fear that, I at least need to know what I have coverage for. We had another situation with power outage. And this kind of goes back to what you brought up initially, Andrew. There are situations where maybe you have a transformer blow, or you have, maybe a hurricane goes through, or a tornado goes through, knocks power out, didn't cause damage to your facility, but you're out of power. You should have coverage for either spoilage of your product or potentially business interruption, so that there's money available to you. And different policies are set up where you have a certain waiting period where you might have to wait 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours before that goes into effect. But I had the coverage. I actually had a 0-hour waiting period. I could have filed a claim immediately. My agent didn't call me. I didn't call him. It was like that, again, that I don't know what to do. I don't know what I should do. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And we didn't lose much, because I didn't have a kitchen at the time, but we lost revenue by not being able to open the doors, and there would have been coverage to help us out during that time. So it's a balancing act of, you got to know what your policy has, and you got to know that you can trust your agent to pick up the phone and call. And unfortunately, I wasn't in a position that I knew my agent very well. It was somebody else that had referred him over to me when I first locked in our insurance policy. And, you know, past is the past, but I had coverage that could have helped me out.
I think we'll dive into what to look for in a policy in just a little bit. That's a really good insight right there. Now, going back to, potential claims or claims that you've experienced, Josh, have you in your brands ever had anything?
So yeah, I mean, we've had a few situations. Thankfully, nothing too major, but definitely enough. There's been enough to remind us, how important like the right coverage is, and when something's going sideways on you, like that's not the time you want to be like, flipping through your policy, figuring out if you're protected, kind of as Chris is talking about, and even as he was mentioning too, right? Having we found it super helpful to kind of make sure you have a partner who understands like the intricacies, quirks of breweries, production, tap rooms, all that stuff. It's huge. Makes it go a lot smoother. But for us, there on the simpler end, we've had some trucks. Just was probably about 7-8 months ago. A truck took out one of our condenser units for a large cooler here. And that was sort of a nightmare, I mean, could have been a nightmare scenario, but having to go through that and file it. We've had trucks kind of hit the buildings in different parts. But I think on the other end of that spectrum too, or where to be mindful of, depending what kind of business you're running, what kind of brewery you have, we get ourselves into third-party contracting business too, and doing a lot of co-packing. And so we've had, thankfully not really many situations, just a singular one kind of pops in my mind. Where honestly it didn't even result in a claim, but there was a pushback on one of our clients that had some issues in the market with some cans and things that ultimately, I mean, there's a million things that can go wrong with cans once they sort of leave the brewery and do different things. And honestly, the insurance company dealt with just managing this situation. What was great for us is they dealt with the situation with the customer. Didn't even result in sort of any type of insurance claim or anything like that. They just dealt with sort of, hey, let's walk through the evidence and some of the things and see what you're seeing. And so that for us was even that piece was a huge weight off our shoulders, letting the insurance company kind of being able to intervene on our behalf to manage that conversation. So totally, I think having it just goes a lot smoother, I think, when you're set up properly from the start.
So let's talk about like the start for a minute, because I mean, there's so many companies in the world that offer insurance, but many of you have mentioned it's important to have someone who understands our industry. So I'd love to hear, like, when you all are seeking out that insurance partner, are there certain questions you're asking them, or how are you making sure they get the beer and beverage world? And Josh, I'd love to kind of pick your brain on that one to start.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a bunch of kind of different backgrounds over my life, and so I think it's interesting. I think at a high level, alcohol is almost as crazy and complex as the U.S. healthcare system in a lot of ways. There's just every state's got different regulations. There's federal laws, and then you mix in the 3-tier system. And while there's a lot of good to that, it just just have more people touching things and doing things, which just creates more complexity in those avenues. So I think I would start with just like, I mean, even though it's sort of, I think for the guys on the call, it's going to be super sort of elementary, but even just having not to call him out, but he's on the call. Like, I mean, Chris is a super sort of unique guy in that respect, because not only is he doing the insurance side, but he's actually part of it. He knows the brewery life. He knows the crazy, he knows you can drop kegs. This can happen. You can get spoilage, electric, just so much of that nuance and the things that can go wrong, or even be able to understand, hey, when the beer leaves our dock, depending on how your shipping terms are arranged with your distributor, it may or may not be your responsibility or your fault to if product gets damaged in the right way. So you can file those things. So I always just kind of start with kind of very simply, hey, tell me what you know about what the beer business, what experience do you have? Do you represent any other breweries? If so, who is that? Because I always like, I'm a fan of, if they say, oh, I represent Tennessee Brew Works, or Mill Creek. Hey, call up KP, Christian. Hey, are you happy with this guy? How's that gone for you? I think those are other great questions to sort of ask. I'll pause. Let KP, Christian, if you guys have other questions you like.
I mean, when we took over the brewery, we had kind of gone with the previous insurance company that was already taking care of Mill Creek. And as I got to know Chris, now we've kind of switched over to his guidance. But going back to the whole insurance thing, there are other parts of insurance that you don't usually see on paper. So for us, it was a wine license and making sure that was bonded properly. when you're working with a government official or a government, department, it's bureaucracy at its finest, and they don't give you the right answers. And Chris really did step up to the plate and kind of helped us maneuver that. So when it comes to insurance, I think, like as Josh said, it's kind of referring to your other colleagues in the industry and seeing who they're using, what they've experienced, and hopefully Chris will become our de facto insurance directive.
Yeah, your bonds were fun. Yeah, KP had a little problem with bonds. Bonds are always fun, but Tennessee Department of Revenue, it should be easier to tell you that here's exactly what I want, and they were not very supportive of telling us exactly what they wanted.
So in the world of like insurance right now, for KP and Josh and Chris as well, is there anything that's just keeping you up at night where like you wish you had more confidence in your insurance to help you with it, or just make you just peace of mind to sleep better?
And I'll tell you, from talking to hundreds of business owners, brewery, restaurant, distilleries, the number of people that are missing something in their policies is surprising. Insurance companies of the carrier side. So I'm a broker. So I'm the middleman between a KP and Cincinnati Insurance. I'm that guy that helps facilitate the paperwork and make sure they get set up with the right folks. And the carriers have done a much better job over the last couple of years of building like a craft beverage program. But there's still gaps. Somebody like the Nations, they've got a group of owners, and I guess KP, you guys are similar with 3 of you guys owning. The bigger you get, the more you need something like a directors and officers coverage. And a lot of companies don't have that, and they don't even realize that they need it. And they don't know what kind of exposure, if you are personally involved with stuff, and there's always a chance that something's going to escalate up to you beyond the insurance. If it's a big enough claim, you want to make sure that there's a level of separation there. Nobody wants it. Nobody truly expects it to happen. But if it does happen, you don't want to find yourself in a bad spot there. I've dealt with breweries that they're building out a new spot and they're doing all the work themselves, and they don't have any coverage during that time period because they're not operational. They haven't been tendered the keys to the facility, but they're doing all the work, and you need a builder's risk policy that can protect you during that time period. That way, if you bust a water line and it floods the space next to you, you got some coverage. And that's some stuff that people just don't even think about. So the stories I hear, they're all over the place, from liquor liability claims to work comp claims to somebody tripping and falling in their parking lot that had nothing to do with their business, and yet they're on the hook because they own the property. I hear a lot of crazy stuff.
I'm going to add Christian back in right now. Go ahead, Josh.
No, I was going to say, I mean, Chris, to me, it's always that, like, oh man, like what isn't in the policy? What did I forget about? But I think also it's always sort of the people aspect, I mean, from making sure your team is safe and supported. I mean, we've got alcohol customers, heavy machinery all in one place. So it's like, there's just so much that can go wrong really fast, right? When you think about, for us, we have a facility about 30,000 square feet here in the Nation's part of Nashville. And, most of that's the production facility, but we have an event space, we have a tap room, there's stairs, there's concrete. And so there's all kinds of stuff going all over the place. So I think, just being proactive and making sure you have the right insurance that covers everything from, somebody falling in your parking lot to your guys working on stuff and pallets and kegs and forklifts and all the things going on. That's really that. Making sure everybody's safe is sort of one of those that really, that you go to every day, you get through another one, you say thank you, say your prayers. So.
Yeah, something I've noticed with a lot of people's policies, the smaller the business as they've grown, they haven't added in a EPLI policy, which is employment practices that protects you from wrongful termination, or you didn't promote somebody because of whatever racial or whatever the situation might be. They can claim something, and that you can always do your due diligence, but when the day's done, if somebody wants to sue you, they can sue you, and do you have coverage? Same thing with work comp. A lot of companies have state minimums, which doesn't mean you're actually protected for very long. $100,000 doesn't take very long to file a claim and have it be well above that. So seeing people be underinsured is probably my second most common situation that I come across. And it's normal, and I get it. I'm a business owner. I want to save money. How can I trim cost? Well, trim cost comes with potential exposure for you as the business owner or the business later if something happens. And insurance is always if something happens, it's there to cover you. But if you don't have the right coverage when something happens, what happens to your business? What happens to personal assets potentially?
And Chris, you're mentioning types of covers that many of us and other owners out there might not even be aware of. So when it comes to selecting a policy, obviously you want to find someone you enjoy working with and someone who speaks the lingo you can trust a little bit more. But do you have any recommendations for like reviewing policies? Is that something that should be done independently? Any tips for handling that part of the process?
Yeah, I think there's always a balance between, you want to trust your agent, and if you trust your agent, ask questions. If you're asking questions and your agent doesn't seem to have answers, it's probably worth maybe finding somebody else, somebody like me or somebody like me in your city, and say, hey, can I have a conversation with you? Somebody that's a good agent's going to be happy to sit down and talk with you. I've talked with a ton of breweries, a ton of startups those are always fun. They're like, I want to start a brewery. And I said, no, I don't think you should. So working through the hoops with people and helping them, evaluate what they have. I think the worst thing you can do is look at your policy and you not know anything about it and think, yeah, it's good. Like, just at least ask your agent to come up with hypotheticals. Like I've had people ask me online, well, if this happened, if fireworks went off inside my building and it was from a kid and my glycol system, blew up, it's like, all right, well, that's pretty creative, but sure. Here's what you would need to have, just ask questions. Worst thing you can do is throw hypotheticals at your agent and have them say, no, you don't have coverage for that. Would you like coverage for that? Well, I don't think it'd ever happen. Well, okay. If you don't think it's ever going to happen, let's weigh the risk and decide if it's something we should add on or not add on. The big things are, do you have equipment coverage? If you're distributing, do you have product coverage, recall coverage? If you've got lots of tanks, not that you ever expect anything to happen, but if you have an electrical surge, if you have, a tank that a gasket blows and you lose a whole batch, do you have coverage if you just made a bad batch? Many policies have coverage for that. You got to, dump a 30-barrel batch. Well, there's a value to that. You put in labor, you put in time, you put in ingredients. Do you have coverage for that? Front of house. Where does your liquor liability exposure stop? It's not just, every state's a little different on that. Do you have cannabis coverage? If you're giving somebody a THC drink, is there coverage? There are a lot of exclusions. There's also exclusions that add back in product depending upon what your state legislation is on that. So making sure you understand what you got coverage for. If you're making a cannabis THC drink, definitely make sure you got the right coverage for your production side of that and distribution. So,
yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, just like the beer industry, I imagine insurance is evolving a lot more for the beverage world than it was just like 5 years ago. You mentioned like THC and things like that. KP and Josh, are there any types of risk you're thinking about now that you really weren't thinking about half a decade ago?
So for us, we're a very family friendly brewery. So going back to, welcome back, Christian.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I had to do a little reboot over here. Small business.
But being family friendly, having a lot of kids in the facility, being in a smaller town, everyone assumes that I can have a few beers and get back to my house. It's relatively close, but where does that liability stop once they leave our building? Knock on wood, thankfully, we've never had any of those situations where someone was involved in a accident or something worse, but that does keep me up every now and then, especially on busy weekends where, we do our best to not overserve someone, but I mean, we've seen Bud Light cans in our parking lot, and I'm like, okay, so now they're drinking on my property. They've left my property. They've gone on a road into the public. What happens, and how do I prove that it was not our fault? And if something does happen, what do we do?
I'm sure Josh and Christian, with you guys being downtown, with Teddy's in particular, Josh, like liquor liability has to be a big concern for you guys. Of did somebody come in here already, just shy of being hammered, and what happens when they leave my place?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a hospitality spot in downtown Nashville, just one door off of Broadway. So there's a lot. You'd imagine there's a lot of chaos down there. But I mean, even right down to it's funny when we were doing that policy and things. I mean, even right down to things like, do you allow dancing on the property can impact the premiums and the things you pay and all the crazy things. But yeah, I think the scarier sides of it for sure, kind of KP mentioned, but it's I mean, you always are worried about what happens. Like you're dealing with alcohol. What makes those places great is being able to be a part of people's special moments, memories, the fun parts, and all those things, but doing it responsibly. And as KP was mentioning, God forbid people make kind of poor choices, get into cars, all those kind of pieces where your liability stops, or even just like acting up on your property and sort of, especially the downtown spot, they might get hostile. You have rooftops. I mean, there really is a sort of an endless, almost like an endless nightmare fuel, right? That you can have. And so, oh yeah, totally right. And so, I mean, that's where I always go back to is having somebody who truly understands what like kind of the businesses you're in and you can count on and has some experience is to me is the only way I kind of find peace of mind in it. It's just they've seen a lot of things and they can figure out what's going on. But yeah, I said those are well, to highlight it too, I think was a good call out, which is the THC side of the world has caused a lot of complexities in kind of doing those drinks and co-packing them and things like it's an interesting time. It is definitely going to cause some challenges, and I mean even just on the side of it where things can get recalled, right? Because all of a sudden labels change because the government changed their idea on the regulation. Do you have coverage for that or do you not? Because you can eat a tremendous amount of money if you don't have coverage, and all of a sudden some regulation changes, and guess what? You have to pull all that stuff off the shelf. So that's probably it's always what you don't know what you don't know, and that is probably the scariest part of this world in insurance, because we do have on the far end, you do have some pretty substantial consequences with using legal substances, but substances that can impair people at the end of the day, and you got to take that seriously.
Awesome,
Christian. I don't know if it was like what keeps you up awake. What are some of those things that are that are out there in the new landscape that scare us?
Yeah, I mean, Josh, we're not quite on as downtown as you are.
Yeah, you're down there.
But we do get those buses. They do roll in. It's funny you mentioned dancing. The license used to prohibit dancing, so they used to have like a specific thing around that because they were trying to keep us all from being burlesques, I guess, or something like that. I think they changed that a few years after we opened, but that was a real thing. It's funny you mentioned the THC. You mentioned the THC thing because, as manufacturers, we all think about what would you like to produce it and what's needed and how's that happen. But it's just as scary just selling it. If you start selling it at your tap room, I certainly beat the speed a few times and come behind a rep that was selling THC beverages and they were all really worried about, hey, we have a hard enough time trying to gauge somebody walking into our place, whether they've had a few too many to drink and whether we should serve them. Now you've got this whole other angle of a high happening. There's no way to really gauge it. There's such a wild range of reactions to THC consumption from individuals. And then you're combining that with a place that's serving alcohol. It's just a lot, man. And we don't currently serve it in our place, but I think, we're reading the tea leaves, and we know where it's headed, and we got to consider what that means. Not just from a production standpoint, manufacturer, but like just serving it. How do you train your staff to minimize liability and increase safety on a product that's still getting regulated, still not there? I think, as strange as it sounds, we're actually happy to find out at least that TABC is taken over, because now we have at least a central source to ask, to call when we have a question. It's been complete Wild West up till now, and like you said, Josh, it's still probably going to change. Something's going to happen. So maybe don't get too deep on it. But, going back to the risk tolerance thing, and like, DRAM shop insurance, and does that cover THC products? I don't know. Maybe throw that back to old Chris Dial and Andrew. What's the story? How's DRAM shop play into all this? Because I'd love to know that.
I'm a generalist, so we're going to rely on Chris for the word on this one.
Yeah.
Well, a lot
on
of it
spot, baby. On the spot.
Yeah, it almost really changes from carrier to carrier. There are some carriers that they're linking it in with your liquor liability, and they're happy to cover it. Others are saying we want nothing to do with THC and cannabis, and you need to go get a special policy that you got to run through excess lines like Kinsale or Amwins or somebody. It's Tennessee's a little more favorable right now. If you go to somewhere like South Carolina, it's a mess right now. They're trying to undo a law that got passed out there. I think they might have passed it, and it goes into effect January 1st. But there in Alabama, dram shop are some of the two worst states right now. So as much as we get frustrated with some things here in Tennessee, we're actually in a little better shape than some other states.
Yeah, but it begs the whole question: what's dram shop cover, right? So a person leaves our place, they have a few drinks, they get an accident, they get a blood test, and they find alcohol in their system, or they give them a breathalyzer, and they go, all right, where'd you get served? And they come back to our place, and they actually identify the individual. The dram shop then kicks in and protects them from getting sued into the ground. Where's the test for THC? Right? So they drank too much THC beverage. Their alcohol percentage is 0.0. The cops have nothing to measure this, certainly not quickly. So the dram shop, so they're clearly high. They've consumed product at, this place. The insurance company says, well, you can't prove it that they were high. Dram shop doesn't matter. They were just a bad driver, and you can see how the finger pointing begins, because there's no mechanism. This is the same complaint that any politician or even the police would make, is that we have no mechanism in which to determine whether somebody is incapable of driving, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, insurance is going to find any possibility to arbitrage the policy. No offense.
No, that is what we deal with all the time. Insurance carriers cover you, but it seems like they work sometimes harder to get out of a claim than just take care of the customer, which is where somebody like me spends most of my day fighting for getting coverage for claims that, what was the situation and why should it be covered versus why should it not be covered, whether it's dram shop or liquor liability or work comp. So yeah, Christian, you're right. Tennessee in particular, we're no different than a lot of the states that the legal side is still not sure how to handle it.
They're waiting for precedent. Just hope it's not us.
Right. So they threw it out there and they said, hey, let's make some revenue off it. We'll tax it. They kind of forgot about the rest of it behind the scenes, that how does it impact a small business? How does it impact large wholesalers?
Do you have any insights on how states like Colorado or Washington have tackled this problem? Because they've been dealing with this for a much, much longer time.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with it yet. I don't have any customers out in Colorado, so it's not something I've spent a lot of time working on. I can work in all states, but I haven't worked in all states. So it'll be something that is coming, and more knowledge and more information. And there's conferences, and Andrew, you probably deal with it more from the conference side. You're probably hearing more about it than I am on the insurance side,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I mean, there's always a conversation on the THC and, you know, all the unique beverages that are coming out there. So it's definitely a hot talking point. It's constantly evolving.
So in summary, that's what will keep me up at night.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing to sleep better. We'll kind of change it up a little bit. So you don't have to go to your insurance. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But what are you doing in your breweries to kind of systems, processes to just reduce risk in general? Are there any, you know, examples you all can give of something you're implementing with your team to just reduce risk and what problem it's solving?
So for us, we have SOP binders for obviously the general day-to-day operations, but we've also built binders just for different parts of our operation. So the kitchen has their own SOP binder. My bar staff has an SOP binder. I've got an SOP binder for my brew guys, just for basic information that can help them, you know, look for things that may be out of place or things that they can kind of keep their head on a swivel for. We also keep a group chat using Slack. So anything that they have questions on, they're encouraged to ask questions. And with us being 3 owners, you know, we tell them we will have our phones with us at all times. If you have a question, there's no wrong question. We want you to ask and get us the information before it turns into a situation. And letting us help guide them when we're not there to make sure that they have the tools and the answers to whether it's, you know, controlling a customer who's been overserved at another location comes in and is denied. Now he's upset. What do we do? Also building relationships with the law enforcement and fire department. You know that we are here, and, you know, if we need anything, we call them in a situation and making sure that they know that we're doing our due diligence, but we may need their assistance.
No, that's good that you all have those systems in place. Josh and Christian, is there anything you're doing to just try to prevent risk? Or maybe even something you're training your team on, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, yes, policies, procedures are always good, as KP mentions. Definitely got to have those. I think for us, we try to create, and I'm sure KP, Christian do too. To me, I think culture is a big part of that too, and allowing people, as KP said, doing the things. Hey, call me anytime. There's no back questions. Creating a culture where people feel free to speak up, and if they do ask questions, I think as anybody in a leadership role, it's always important to, even though you might be tired or all those things, is to remember, hey, they're doing it because they want to make sure the business is protected, or they're doing the right things. And so, encouraging that behavior and giving them all kind of a nice, safe place to ask those questions, to do those things, I think would be another big piece that we try to do is just encourage everybody to take an active role. And if they see something that can be improved or be done better, of course, at the end of the day, again, as all the guys in this film will echo, it's like, employees are super important. They're your teammates and your friends, and you want to keep them all safe. So we're all coming from that perspective. So anything we can do to make that better, let us know.
No, Chris.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Christian.
Well, I was just going to jump in and say one thing that, the names and the faces have changed a bit, but Department of Agriculture has been an incredible resource for us to come over and kind of hold our hand through facility and getting it tip top. And this duly serves to, I think, put us in a better position to protect our employees and mitigate liability from an insurance standpoint too. I would say the one thing I really like about that regulator is that they seem to want to help you. You can invite them over and not be fearful that, I come from finance, and they used to always saying, like, never invite the regulator in your backyard, even when you think you're doing everything right. Like, there's always something you don't know. And Department of Agriculture, they come over and they will tell you what's wrong, but they will help you resolve it. They will give you the time you need and so forth. And that's just been a wonderful relationship. So my 2 cents, historically speaking, at least, they've been a great resource for us to get us in a much better spot. And that, like I said, duly serves the insurance question as well, and liability question.
Good tip. No, Chris Dial, with experience on the insurance side and the brewery side, since you've been wearing your insurance hat longer and longer, what's something you've learned that you've implemented some sort of procedure at Wanderlinger?
Yeah, so I guess the first part to that is anytime I get, like, if I'm quoting Christian's policy, I've got to go out to a bunch of carriers, and the more information that I have with pictures and, explanation of how they handle potential risk, whether it's closing early or they, have a scanner for IDs, or here's the SOPs that they're kind of working on. They do forklift training. They're doing a sexual harassment training once a quarter, any of that kind of stuff. It helps me paint a picture that this business owner takes this stuff seriously, and they are trying to do the best that they can to limit their risk and limit the potential that could be a claim. So, when I talk to people and they just say, well, here's my policy, see if you can get it cheaper. That doesn't help me paint a picture to an underwriter that says, look, these guys actually understand what they're doing, and this is a good risk for you as a carrier to take on. So taking that, when we opened our new location, I was able to go in and talk with my brother and verify certain things that we should or should not do. And those that know my brother, we tend to like to do this sometimes. So the fun is trying to convince him why certain things might be very advantageous for us not to do, or certain things that we definitely should do, because the way I view things and the way he views things may not always line up. There's a lot of business owners that are out there. So, me taking some of that stuff and, might be KP saying, look, you got a forklift back there. You need to put a training program together. It could be as simple as just a video that says, here's how you operate it, and then have somebody sign off on a sheet that they've been trained. Well, that's limiting your risk. Now you have somebody that should know how to drive it, and you've agreed that they should know how to drive it. And if they do it wrong, you've got verification that you had already told them not to do it that way. It's a small thing, but it's something. And the more of those that you have, the safer your business is, which in theory should drive down your insurance cost and definitely drive down the risk exposure that you're not going to have to file a claim that could put you in a tough spot.
I would kind of echo, Christian, that's a good point, call out, like, about using outside firms and sources, or, things, regulatory bodies. One of the things, going back to our downtown property we use, and we subsequently use here in our tap room too, is we partnered with actually the sexual assault center here. They do safe bar training, and so we were one of the first bars downtown to become a safe bar, which means they come in, they do really extensive training with the staff and the team about, here's all the different types of drugs that are out there in the market right now, and the effects they have on people, and the ways that you can recognize them. And they even give us tools to use, like drug detecting coasters, and we have posters up in our establishments that kind of say, hey, if you're feeling uncomfortable, for us, they use the keyword angel shot. Like, if you go to the bar, order an angel shot, right? It means, hey, I think something isn't right and I need your help. And so I think doing that, look, again, great call by Christian. I think there's a lot of organizations, agencies, and things that can even help you with the training programs, even if you're not, able to come up with them yourself or do these things. And that really goes a long way to helping your staff and the team sort of see the risks and be able to help mitigate them. Or I honestly think it's just, a lot of it's just even knowing what to do or how to react in this situation. They may want to help, but they just don't even know what to do when that's going on. And so if you give them that training and those tools to use it, it helps everybody out tremendously. So avoid be proactive and avoid some of those situations. So
good tips there, Josh. It's been fun hearing all the stories today and lessons learned. So I like to go around the table one more time as we wind down. And, Chris, we started with you first, so we're going to end with you this time. So you get time to think. So, Christian, you were the last to join us today. You'll be the first to send us home. Just in the world of insurance, everything you've learned over your career, what's one takeaway you hope everybody takes from this session today?
Shop.
Yeah.
Don't get complacent. Read your policies. You will get burned eventually if you do not. You will get burned fast if you do not shop, and you get burned eventually if you don't read it. There's a lot of weird things that happen when you mentioned that you have a brewery with policies. And strangely, this year, that was my question I was going to ask you guys also, is our building insurance changed because there was a brewery in the building? And that was a notable thing that we noticed this year, and can't quite figure out why that is. It might have been something about the state of the industry. Maybe it was a credit issue from the industry or something, but nonetheless, you have that brewery stamp, the rules are a little bit different. You have the alcohol stamp, the rules are different. And soon you have that THC stamp and the rules will be different. And insurance will certainly find a way to protect themselves. The actuarials will do their work. But my 2 cents in the send-off is read your policies and shop your policies. And if you do not do those 2 things, you will end up paying more than you need to, and you will eventually get burned. From not being covered by something unexpectedly.
Thanks for sharing that, Christian. Josh, your turn.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I think so many people are you get so caught up in trying to make great beers, win awards. It's totally fair, right? Like that's what we love to do, and what we probably what brought all of us into this business. But I think what ends up happening is you almost don't take the time to really understand or deal with the business side of the equation of owning a brewery. And so I think it's super easy to overlook coverages for event liabilities, equipment breakdowns. I mean, we didn't even get into there's even potentially cyber issues and things like that. When you think about your POS systems and some of the credit card things you're processing and whatnot. I guess I would just say to people is don't, it's easy to kind of look the other way or bury your head and say, it's like, get ahead of it, talk to somebody who gets breweries, not to, I think that's going to be way more effective with the complexities we have versus just a general insurance agent. I mean, the risks out there are real, and you need to take heed of them. But at the end of the day, like if you plan for them, they don't have to take you down or cause business interruption. But yeah, advice: just get ahead of it.
Good tip. KP, your turn.
I think Christian had something to add real quick.
Oh, go ahead,
just one more thing. Taking beer off site. If the person does not properly license, Dram Shop will not protect you if your staff starts serving the beer at their events, at their something. So that's how somebody in our industry is going to get burned, running over to a retailer that they love and passing out beers for somebody who has not applied for their event nor has event insurance. That Dram Shop, that will fall back on you. They're unprotected. That is something that's been driving me crazy because we get pushed on by accounts and some of our peers, no one in this call, and this peers will do that without a thought, and it's just going to burn all of us. Sorry, pet peeve moment.
No,
am I getting old and crotchety? My God.
I think both Christian and Josh have kind of really summarized most of the important things that cross our minds. But kind of to take off of Josh's point as well, utilizing your peers, talking to your other industry, folks that are in the brewing industry or even maybe selling a product that you're thinking about selling. How are they handling those liabilities? That might help you to either acquire the proper insurance or just gain the knowledge. But I think you can never stop learning about what you need to operate. And as days go on, they're going to continually change. So just try to keep up with the information that's available.
Thanks, KP. Now, Chris, take us home.
So money is, you want to keep your money in your pocket, and you want somebody that can help you do that. When you have a financial planner, you trust them, you've interviewed them, you didn't just go with the lowest rate. When you have an attorney, you trust them, you rely on them. You probably didn't go with the lowest rate, you just didn't pick somebody off the internet. Same thing with insurance. You should have 3 people in your corner: CPA, attorney, financial planner, insurance agent's the 4th. So having somebody that you can trust pick up the phone, will pick up the phone when you call. Whether you just rely on them for answers or you rely on them to write your policy, hopefully it's one and the same. But I always tell people I'm a phone call away and I can answer any question, and questions are free. So
I guess this is when I ask you, how do we get a hold of you, Chris?
So Chris at breweryagents.com, or you can find me on my cell phone, 615-496-6070. Call me.
You're brave.
I am.
I think we've had 2 people give their phone number out in about 600 of these conversations.
Well, there you go.
Well, awesome. Well, Chris, I appreciate you helping organize this. This is a really great and important conversation. We made insurance fun today. At least I think it was entertaining, and I appreciate everybody sharing your insight. So KP, Josh, and Christian, I hope to share pints with you at some point. And everybody else, we'll see you soon. Have a great afternoon and cheers.
Absolutely.
Cheers,
Thank
guys.
you. Take care.
Thank you.